Week 9 of the National Football League is here, folks. And after last week, we went 13-3 in the money line. That puts us at 83-41 on the year through week 8. Again, last year through week 8, we were 82-40. So there were two more games at this time last year than there were this year. Again, that's just having to do with, bye weeks and all that. Some weeks there are two teams on a bye. Other weeks, like last week, there are zero teams on a bye. They did that last year in week 8 as well, where all 16 teams played. This week, there are only two teams on a bye. And then last week, again, we were 3 for 5 in best bets. That puts us at 23 for 40 on the year in best bets. A reminder, last year we were 24 of 39 with one push. So essentially the push is the difference of a game or so. This week, there's a lot of interesting lines. There's a lot of interesting games. There are some games that I want to take that I think there are better numbers on the board for. There are some games that I subbed out here that, I was debating on back and forth. There are a little bit of some factors here that I want to stay away from. There are some small lines that I feel like could go either way that I stayed from. There are just some games that I don't want to touch. And again, as we've gotten now to the halfway point of the season here, we are seeing that, in my opinion, out of the 16 games last week, in 13 of them, the better quarterback won. So that's where I'm going after the majority of these money line games. I think there's a reason why, I've gone 13-3 last week in the money line, the week before that, 12-3. So that's, 25-6. You take a look at week 6, I went 13-1. So that's, 38-7 over the last 3 weeks in the money line. And that's one of the reasons why we have sort of made up ground in our picks from a year ago. So without further ado, let's get into it. We're gonna start with Thursday night, Halloween night, obviously tonight. Texans Jets. Houston is a 1.5 point underdog. Now, Stephon Diggs did suffer an ACL injury against the Colts on Sunday. His season is done. We know Nico Collins is still out for Houston, so this is going to be a Tank Dell game who looks like he may even be banged up, as well as a Joe Mixon game. And again, CJ Stroud, even though Houston is winning this year, he has not had the best year throwing the football. It's really been a Joe Mixon led team, and this team, is going to be, in my opinion, a Joe Mixon led team on Thursday night. He's going to get the majority of the workload. And ironically, again, for the Jets, they started off 2-1. They beat New England on a Thursday night in week 3. It is week 9, and they have not had a victory since. Greg Zuerlein has arguably cost them 2 games as being the kicker. But ever since the Jets won that Thursday night game, they fired their coach and Robert Saleh. They brought in Devontae Adams, who seemingly, for whatever reason, is not on the same page as Aaron Rodgers. This team is a circus, and it's really disappointing for me. I thought the Jets did everything in their power this year. I thought they've been all in on this year. The firing of Robert Saleh was really surprising considering the fact how well their defense had played after that London game where they essentially, held Minnesota to 2 field goals. And you can make an argument if it wasn't for the Aaron Rodgers pick six, they beat the Vikings in that game. So I'm just so disappointed in the Jets. I think there's a real possibility they finally get back on track here on Thursday night, but I don't trust them. I'll take the Texans. This feels like a weird game to me. Injuries on both sides here, especially with the Houston wide receivers. Again, I'll take Houston just because I think CJ Stroud at this point is a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. Another weird one here. Initially, I like the Chargers on the road against Cleveland. They're favored by 1.5. We talked about it last week where, Land McConkey has really stepped up to be that Charger outside number one wide receiver, even though this team is still based on, J.K. Dobbins running the football, Justin Herbert not turning the football over. and the Chargers getting after the quarterback. But what Jameis Winston did last week in Cleveland does concern me a little bit on the Chargers side of it. Again, I'm happy. I'm from Cleveland. You guys know I've always called myself a Browns observer. I said back to week two that Jameis Winston should be starting for this Browns team. The offensive line that was in shambles for the majority of the year played their best game by far on Sunday against the Ravens. Again, at the same time, Jameis Winston did throw the ball to Kyle Hamilton. He should have intercepted it. Baltimore should have won the game. Jameis Winston to me, he is, he played well, but he threw about 4 or 5 interceptions that should have been dropped. So he is still turnover prone. I think, John Harbaugh is probably going to give his brother Jim everything he saw about the Browns. Was that 1 week by Jameis Winston and the Browns offensive line an aberration? They're going up against a very good Chargers defense at stopping the run. Nick Chubb has not gotten going this far early in this season. So I like the Chargers here to win. I think again, Jim Harbaugh's used to this cold weather. Him being in Michigan, going into Ohio State. I think that both sides here really want a victory. I think the Browns will play well. Ken Dorsey, second game as offensive coordinator. We'll see if it's a real change or if it's sort of a 1 week boost there with a new play caller, a lot like we saw with the Jets. Todd Downing had a good game. His first game play calling hasn't been great since. So I'm not sure. Again, I think Justin Herbert better than Jameis Winston, but I'm just not going to trust this bet here. I'm going to stay away from it. Baltimore at Denver. Now the line here is 9.5, which does feel high. Even though Lamar Jackson is again way better than Bo Nix. I like the Ravens here. I think they easily win. I think Sean Payton and crew will probably have a hard time covering Baltimore. I think Denver, they're coming off a couple good wins in a row. They're having a very good season so far, already at 5 wins. They have positioned themselves as wild card contenders. But I think Baltimore's coming off a bad loss to Cleveland. They're going to be angry. They'll bounce back. They'll win. This is a situation where, again, could Denver backdoor cover? Sure. But I like the Ravens here. Not going to bet it. Same thing here with Cincinnati and Vegas. Listen, I don't trust either of these teams. I don't trust either defense. I don't know yet if T. Higgins is going to play for Cincinnati, which I do think that significantly changes their offense. Joe Burrow and that Bengals offense has been a different offense this year when Chase and Higgins are on the field as opposed to just one of them on the field. But their Bengals defense has been horrific. I mean, you can throw on Cincinnati. It's possible that Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, they have a good game here. Cincinnati does not force a lot of turnovers, so if Gardner Minshew, assuming he's still going to be the quarterback there for Vegas, if he doesn't turn the football over, listen, Vegas went into Baltimore this year and stunned them. The same situation here could happen for Cincinnati. A lot like the Ravens Broncos game, I think the Bengals could cover 7.5 here. I do feel like there's better numbers on the board. I'll take Cincinnati in the money line, staying away from the bet. This is going to be my first bet, and I'm going ugly here, folks. I'm taking New England. Not only am I taking them in the money line, but I'm taking them plus 3.5. Yes, I do think the Patriots win 2 games in a row. I think they beat the Titans on Sunday. And I go back to this. Number one, I don't think any of these two teams can blow each other up. I think that Tennessee is tanking a lot like New England. We saw New England just give away a Sean, the pass rusher to Kansas City. We've seen Tennessee give away DeAndre Hopkins, the receiver to Kansas City. I think, it doesn't matter to me if it's Drake May or Jacoby Brissett. I think New England's going to be able to move the ball on Tennessee. And again, when you have played the Lions this year, every team that has played the Lions, even though last week Tennessee got embarrassed by Detroit, and typically teams that get embarrassed do bounce back. New England got an emotional eye victory against the Jets. Typically, those two teams go back down to earth. So the side here says Tennessee. But also, again, every team that has played the Lions this year has either lost the following week or most of the time has gotten blown out again the following week. I think Detroit is just so physical. They're so tough on you. I think New England with that run game, Ramondre Stevenson, if they stick to it like they did against the Jets, they can physically wear down a Tennessee Titans defense. It's just not that good. And again, I think either way, plus 3.5 here. Give me the hook. I'm taking New England as a dog in an ugly one. Dolphins at Bills. Listen, Miami, they're 2-5 at this point, right behind New England and the Jets at 2-6. Their season does essentially feel over. And Buffalo, we saw 7 weeks ago what they did to Miami on a Thursday night in Miami. I just think the Bills own the Dolphins. I think it's a bad matchup for Miami for whatever reason. And I think Miami will fall to 2-6. I think Buffalo will get a bigger lead on the AFC East. And if my prediction comes true, if New England wins, if Miami loses, and the Jets lose, Buffalo and New England will be your two top teams in the AFC East, something I didn't think would be possible, at this point here, midway through the NFL season. I think Josh Allen and crew, again, they just have Miami's number. I think they can win by at least a touchdown. I'll take Buffalo here, -6.5. Commanders at Giants. I was considering this one. I think the Commanders -3.5 would be the side here, but there's a couple numbers that I think are in favor of the Giants, which is why I could see an upset here, which is why I'm gonna stay away from the game. Number one is Jaden Daniels and that incredible emotional Hail Mary victory. Typically, when you get a Hail Mary victory like that, yes, it could jumpstart your season, but the next week, you kind of come out flat, right? You're kind of feeling over your head, over your skis. And we all remember that week 2 game where if the Giants had a field goal kicker, they would have beat the Commanders. And we know Daniel Jones can't defeat the Cowboys or Eagles, but he can defeat the Commanders. And he's playing for his job. Again, he's played better on the road this year at home. He hasn't had a touchdown at home since signing that massive extension at the end of the 2022 NFL season. That probably does change this week. Again, divisional rivalry. Giants, Brian Dable's coaching for his job. They play very well against the Commanders. For whatever reason, it's just a bad matchup. So I could see the Giants coming in here +3.5 and at least covering, if not winning outright. But I'll take Jaden Daniels in this game over Daniel Jones. Give me the Commanders on the road to sweep the Giants. New Orleans at Carolina. We know what the Saints did to Carolina in week 1. It's probably smart, for me to take the Saints here -7, but I don't know if it's going to be Haney. I don't know if it's going to be Spencer Rattler for New Orleans. And quite frankly, these two teams are bad. I think the Saints probably blow them out, but I'll be honest, I don't really want to watch this game. These may be, two of the worst 4 teams in the National Football League. There's nothing right now that excites me about either one of these teams. Deontay Johnson, who got traded to Carolina in the offseason from Pittsburgh, he's already in Baltimore. It just shows you what a mess to me the Carolina Panthers are. I think the Saints win, and I don't want to spend any more time on it. Okay, Dallas at Atlanta. So this is a real tricky game because Dallas, we've talked about Dallas's schedule, right? We know they play Philadelphia next week, their arch rival. Then they take on their in-state rival Texans. Then they got to go to Washington to take on another arch rival in the Commanders. So that's a very heavy lift. They're coming off an emotional game against their conference rival in the San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, that's a lot of rivalry weeks. Now historically, they have done well against Kirk Cousins in his career, whether he's been in Washington or Minnesota. Atlanta just got a big win at Tampa Bay last week, divisional road victory. There may be a little regress to the meme here. The last time they were at home, Seattle smashed them. They did not look great. And in my opinion, out of the next 4 or 5 weeks, besides the Giants on Thanksgiving, this is the most winnable game for Dallas. But for whatever reason, I think Raheem Morris, Kirk Cousins against that bad Cowboys defense, where I don't think Micah Parsons or Demarcus Lawrence is going to be back yet for Dallas. I think Kirk Cousins is comfortable. Bijan Robinson runs the football. Dallas cannot run the football. Atlanta probably wins by a field goal. That line by 2.5's about right. I think it's a very close game, but I think in this game, I'll take Atlanta at home. Jacksonville at Philly. Now, Jacksonville just traded away their off tackle, Cam Robinson, to Minnesota. So I think Jacksonville sort of, giving up on the season here. They're at 2-6. But it is Doug Peterson's return going to Philly. And so we'll see, how much this Jaguars locker room still believes in Doug Peterson. Eagles are going out in their Kelly green uniforms. Jaguars, besides the Ravens, are the worst pass defense in the NFL. This is a A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith type game for Jalen Hurts. And I think you could get Saquon Barkley here going in the passing game, dating back to week 4 against Tampa Bay. Jalen Hurts has not added an interception. He's doing a better job taking care of the football. We're seeing more passes over the middle. And this Vic Fangio defense, again, ever since that Tampa Bay game, the team has only missed approximately 3 tackles a game. They're doing a better job tackling. I think Philadelphia wins. Jacksonville backdoor covered essentially last week against Green Bay. They could do it again. Again, this is going to be a game to see how much this team is fired up for their head coach, Doug Peterson. If Philadelphia comes in there and does to the Jags what they did to Cincinnati and what they did to the Giants, Doug Peterson may not have a job on Monday. Okay, I'm doing it again, folks. I'm taking the Bears. I'm taking them +1.5 against the Arizona Cardinals. I think they win outright. Again, this is a situation where I think Chicago had such an emotional loss last week, and it was such a abandoned practice by Matt Eberflus, who was still defending, the run up the middle to the backup offensive lineman. That was a fumble. He was still defending, not guarding the sideline on that El Mary when Dan Quinn said that those 13 yards is what allowed Jane Daniels to throw the football. Otherwise, they would have had to put in Marcus Mariota because of those cracked ribs. And I think that this loss, hopefully for Chicago, it shows accountability. The Bears have shown the ability to beat up on bad football teams this year. And again, Arizona, they had a good win against the Chargers. It was a walk-off win. They had a good win against Miami. It was a walk-off win. These are the type of games they play. They play close games. I think Jalen Johnson, their great corner, takes the responsibility of Marvin Harrison, takes him out of the game. These are two, number one picks in Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams. Both were coached by Lincoln Riley at some point in their careers. I just think Chicago, DeAndre Swift in that run game, I think that they just, take over the game. Arizona's secondary is not great. Again, Arizona is just an inconsistent football team to me. And Chicago in their division, the NFC West, as we talked about, 8 or 9 wins at this point, could win that division. In the NFC North, you may be in last place with 9 or 10 wins. It's the best division in football this year. For that reason, I think Caleb Williams outplays Kyler Murray. Give me the Bears on the road. And then I'm also going to take the Rams. I think this is the best bet on the board this week. Sean McVay has owned Seattle throughout his career. Seattle has struggled at home this year. They've lost 3 straight at home to the Giants, to the Niners, to the Bills last week. Don't know yet if DK Metcalf is going to play for Seattle. I don't even think it matters. I think, Matthew Stafford's got his weapons back. He's got his offensive line back. And all of a sudden, this Rams team that was so good last year, that took Detroit down to the wire in the wild card game, that took Detroit down to the wire in week 1. This is a Rams team now that not only is in real wild card position, but is in position, in my opinion, to potentially steal the NFC West from the San Francisco 49ers. Okay, Detroit at Green Bay. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this is going to be the one rare game this weekend where even if Malik Willis plays, I'm going to take Green Bay +3.5. I think they win outright. Now, again, this is the game that I really changed at the last minute and took out of my best bets because I don't know if it's going to be Malik Willis. I don't know if it's going to be Jordan Love. If I find out it's going to be Jordan Love, I probably will swap out, one of these games that I have either in the 425 window or the 820 window for Sunday Night Football. Spoiler alert, I'm taking the Vikings minus 5.5 against Indianapolis. But I just think that again, this is going to be Detroit's first game this year where they are outside. Week one, they were home. Week two, they were home. Week three, they were in the dome there, against Arizona. Week four, they were home. Week five, they had a bye. Week six, they were in a dome against Dallas. Week seven, they were in a dome against Minnesota. And then week eight, they were home. So we know Jared Goff's history, under 40 degrees. It's not going to be that cold. It's actually going to be unseasonably warm here for November 3rd. This is a big game we know for both teams. We know what Malik Willis has done though since he's been in for Green Bay. He's done nothing but win. This Detroit team, they're gonna walk on Josh Jacobs. Dan Campbell's gonna be fired up for this game, but I think Green Bay is too. I don't think they're afraid of the Lions. Listen, they went into Detroit last year. They shocked the Lions on Thanksgiving. This is a situation where there's going to be a lot of rain here. Something Detroit, as I just mentioned, has not been used to. Green Bay is used to. For that reason, I like the Packers. I'm taking them here. And again, I'll take the Vikings minus 5.5 on Sunday night against Joe Flacco and the Indianapolis Colts. We talked about the Anthony Richardson situation where he is getting benched. That may be the end of the Anthony Richardson era in Indianapolis. Shocking after 2 years that he's turned out this bad, in my opinion. But the Minnesota Vikings are coming off two bad losses, a heartbreaker to the Lions. They lose to the Rams on Thursday night. They get extra rest to prepare now. Indianapolis does not have the greatest secondary in the world. TJ Hockenson does come back for Minnesota. He's going to be a full go for them. I think they get him involved. I think Justin Jefferson has a big game. Brian Flores rattles Joe Flacco in Indianapolis, who, outside of big plays, Flacco has not been as special this year, in my opinion, as he's been for Cleveland last year. So I think the Vikings bounce back here. I think that they win by at least 5.5. And then Monday night, Tampa Bay at Kansas City. This game sort of got the steam taken off of it, with Tampa Bay losing its receivers. Kansas City favored by 8.5 does seem like a lot, but I think the line here is telling you how much Vegas respects the Chiefs defense, because this defense has not given up 28 points dating back to Super Bowl 57 against the Philadelphia Eagles. And so for that reason there, I do like Kansas City in this game. I think that they win. I think that, Todd Bowles and the Bucks historically has done well against Kansas City, but I think Andy Reid's going to be ready for it. And I think without those Tampa Bay receivers, it's going to be a long night for Baker Mayfield and crew. Again, I think there's better bets on the board. We saw Tampa able to move the ball last week on Atlanta, but it's nothing like Kansas City's defense. This could be ugly for Tampa Bay in a primetime spot. We'll see how well Baker plays here, but I like Kansas City to at least win the game. And so to recap, I have Houston over the Jets tonight on Halloween, Chargers over the Browns in Cleveland, Baltimore at home over Denver, Cincinnati at home over Vegas, New England on the road over Tennessee, Buffalo at home over Miami, Washington on the road against the New York Football Giants, New Orleans on the road against Carolina, Atlanta at home over Dallas, Philly at home over Jacksonville. I got Chicago on the road against Arizona, Rams on the road against Seattle, Green Bay at home over Detroit, Minnesota at home over Indianapolis, and then Kansas City at home over Tampa Bay. My five best bets for week 9 of the 2024 NFL season are: I like New England as one of my two dogs here, plus 3.5 against the Tennessee Titans. I like Buffalo to cover 6.5 against Miami. I like Chicago plus 1.5 here to upset Arizona. I like the Rams on the road minus 1.5 at Seattle. And I like Minnesota Sunday night to cover 5.5 against Joe Flacco and the Indianapolis Colts. Like that clip from the Brand's World podcast? If so, make sure you go down there and hit that subscribe button. While you're down there hitting the subscribe button, make sure to also hit the notification bell so you never miss another upload. And make sure you check out all the other clips from the Brand's World podcast right here on YouTube.